What's up, everybody? I'm Steven.
I'm Will, and
This
this
is
is
the
Post-P
Chronicles.
Chronicles. So, Steven, man, what we got going on today?
Well, I am very happy today to introduce one of my friends and someone I consider a mentor and has helped me a lot in life in the short amount of years I've known him. He's known as Big Adam, 6'8", 286. Adam Moreno. What's up, Adam?
How's it going, guys? And I thank you very much for inviting me and allowing me to be a part of this this podcast. It's definitely a privilege. Thank you very much for inviting me and allowing me to share my experience, strength, and hope.
Our pleasure, truly.
So, Adam, obviously you got a advanced history in, crime and drug addiction, and then you've experienced success. And I just want to talk to you today about, let's just hear your story from the beginning and, what got you into basically trouble and then where you went up from there.
Well, full disclosure, my name is Adam, and I am a junkie. So just so you guys understand that I've been in and out of drug addiction my entire life, whether I was part of the problem or part of the solution. I've had heroin addictions and or illicit narcotic addiction since I was around 13 years old. Obviously, I experimented with other drugs before that, but you could consider me a full-blown junkie by the age of 13. Okay, and one of the things that I wanted to bring up in regards to, I know this is post-P, I want to talk about pre-P that is actually being discussed here, which is incarceration. I'm going to talk about pre-P because I was in prison in the bondage of self way prior to ever becoming incarcerated. Growing up, I'm socially awkward. I grew up I'm an introvert. By nature, I'm an introvert. You have to force me out the house sometimes. And I have a level of social awkwardness, and that I just made me feel, I guess you could say that I was very uncomfortable in my own skin. I'm 6'8", which means that I didn't grow like everybody else. So my growth curve was a little different from everybody else's. And it was suggested to me from what I know today in my program that I was born bodily and mentally different from my fellows, okay? Which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just is a thing that needs to be, and I need to be aware of.
Right.
And I need to seek daily solution and daily reprieve from my inability to deal with life on life's terms. It always started when I was young with, what are they going to diagnose me with this time? It started with, with all the learning disabilities. They always were trying to put me on a medication of some sort. So I was always heavily medicated as a kid. And so obviously there's a level of inaccuracy in most diagnoses. They prefer to use a shotgun approach. So it's very difficult to actually truly diagnose somebody who's, number one, developing themselves, okay, and number two, that has a lot of cross symptoms that would cross into other things. What I know them to be today as untreated alcoholism, and the reason why I use the word alcoholism is because that's how it was defined. And I'm part of a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. And no, I was never a big drinker, but you can just substitute the ism. I'm addicted to more, okay? As it was clearly defined to me from what I know from being in a program of recovery, is that I had an inability to deal with life on life's terms. I was disenfranchised. I felt less than. I had a very rough time, accepting myself for who I was, And as I proceeded with this, this disconnect to my, peers, I obviously started to develop, like what we say, we have a really low self-esteem, but a really big ego. So we start to do things that either will push you away or get you to believe something that's not true. So I started to lie pretty soon. And this is where the bondage of self started. Because I wanted you to believe that I was something that I wasn't, because I didn't want you to know who I was. Because right at the beginning, I know that you would understand, or sorry, that you wouldn't like me.
I ask you a question. Was there one moment when you was growing up, you said you had bondage to self and you wanted to dissociate yourself with people? Like, was there one moment that stood out to you?
From the beginning, it was, I mean, you can say it was in grade school, man. I mean, I just never fit in. I truly, I still don't. I didn't understand that that's like, it's special.
Right.
And I stood out, but I didn't have the self-confidence to be able to hold that, that position. I crumbled every time that you put an expectation on me, I crumbled. And because I crumbled, I embarrassed myself. So at that point, I would act out.
Right.
And in that action, I would obviously commit, or I would basically behave inappropriately.
Right.
And that inappropriate behavior eventually led to, they say if you want self-esteem, you do esteemable things. I did the opposite. I did things that truly would never gain me any type of esteem.
Right.
Yeah. So from that position, obviously you can see that there's going to be some behavior issues that I would obviously experience as a kid. So obviously the direction I chose is with kids that are performing the same thing, So, definitely. I mean, I was disenfranchised, very similar to how I have heard your story. I mean, it started with drugs, started with gangs. I took a position as this is just gonna be me, and this is how I'm gonna treat myself. Because we all believe that we all accept the love that we believe we deserve.
Definitely.
And so I didn't believe that I deserved necessarily the love that would be genuine. So I allowed myself to perpetuate the lie.
Right.
Yeah.
So you growing up, things happen, you start to do drugs, you start to commit crimes. Now, how does this start to lead you to jail or juvenile hall or,
So obviously I did not belong on the streets.
Right.
I didn't belong on the streets even when I was younger. So like I said, with the multitude of diagnoses encompassed with the drug addiction, encompassed with the gangs, encompassed with just the all around, I needed to be relieved of my freedom. Okay. Right. One thing that I believe is that I've never had my freedom taken from me.
Definitely.
Okay. I gave it away. I gave it away as a young kid because I didn't value my freedom, because I didn't value myself. I had a very poor self-image of myself, so I allowed myself, when I was looking for love, like they say we look for love in the wrong places, right? Well, I knew where I was looking. I was fully cognizant of everything that I was doing, I made the decisions based on the fact that that's where I felt I belonged. Because like I said, we all are going to go after the love that we believe we deserve. Luckily, I believe that I was not arrested. I was rescued, especially during the early 90s. As you can attest to, the gangs and the drugs and the issues that were going on in the streets definitely would not. I'm just happy I'm not a statistic, man.
Right.
So I did my first term when I was 14, and let's just say that throughout this process, I lost over a decade of my life. To this, I'm sorry. I gave away a decade of my life to the system and to everything else that is encompassed in that. I got used to blue pajamas and bologna sandwiches, man. And to be honest with you, man, I felt better there. I felt better in a program. I did well, matter of fact. I did. I flourished in program.
The structure.
In structure. I flourished in structure, man. And with my options taken away, I did great.
Right.
I did great.
So let me ask you something. Obviously, you said you flourished in juvenile hall. I've noticed when I've been in juvenile hall talking to kids, they're like, okay, at least I got a bed in here. I get 3 square meals a day in here. I know what's going to happen in here. Was your upbringing unstable? Did you have a mother? Did you have a father? What was your upbringing like to led you to, while you were in juvenile hall, to think, it's better in here?
It's not necessarily that my upbringing, because I didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. So like when you're cocooned somewhere, like whether you're cocooned in the ghetto or you're cocooned in a rich environment, you don't necessarily see anything else. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe I had a bad childhood. I don't. I didn't see you with better ones. Yeah. So I only saw people with the same. So at the end of the day, it wasn't like I was trying to run from my parents. I was running from me. Yeah. I was running from me. It wasn't that I was running from my parents, My mother was never really involved, and my dad, he got sober when he was 60, so just do the math on that one. He was a great friend. He was a great friend. But because what I know now, because of his lack of participation in the solution, he couldn't actually show me what the solution was. And that's not a knock on him, okay? That's not a knock on him. What it is you cannot transmit something that you do not have.
Yeah.
Period. So I'm not saying that it's his fault. And not only that, I should be seeking solution. I shouldn't be seeking problem. So I don't blame my parents. No, I don't blame my parents. And one of the things too, I know that when I say I flourished in juvenile hall, that's a perception that seemed from two different norms too. Okay, when I say I flourished, it was better than what was happening.
Yeah.
So flourish to me was just not with the needle in my arm, or was not with, in Spanish, being a tirado, just on this, just you know what I mean. So at the end of the day, I can tell you right now that my position was better than when I was before. So that's what I mean by flourish. Because when you're so far below zero, and you just get to zero, okay? To a normal person, they're not going to perceive that as flourishing. But to me, when you're 700 points below zero, man, and you just revert back to the mean,
that's success.
Okay? That's success.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm not destroying myself.
Right.
So at a certain point, that was a success to me, anyways.
Definitely. I mean, I've seen people go to jail and, like you said, they strung out on the street, and once they hit the county jail or go to prison, they start to get their weight back up, and that's a success. They're not really doing anything, but that's their success. So I definitely understand
we
what
talked
you're saying.
about last week with Morgan. Guys couldn't wait to go in that were on drugs. So they knew when
Yeah.
they went in, they'd clean up, they get all
Get
buff
bigger,
again.
exactly.
And then they'd go back out and get back on drugs.
Definitely.
Well, that's why I bring up the fact that we don't get arrested, we get rescued.
Yeah.
we get rescued from ourselves. So back to the bondage of self. I kept myself in this bondage of self for a very, very long time. I was incarcerated, and like I said, I was in prison way before I was incarcerated, and I was also in prison after I was incarcerated. Okay, so it wasn't until I was able to let go and look for another solution, or the solution, or a solution, period, where I was just perpetuating just a long-term problem, and then in that long-term problem, obviously I lived a life of consequence. My life was in an eternal consequence. There was never like an upside to it. There was only relief of a downside, So the only time I actually positioned myself that where my life was actually in a direction that I could say that was tolerable at best was when I got relief from going down. So it was just a slowdown of the downturn, and then I would kind of coast back up, but I was still so far underwater. So let's go post P now. Okay. So let's go post P. So something happened during this entire process. So what ended up, so everybody asked me, well, what happened to you that made you change, man? It's like, it wasn't what I had become. Because I never became anything.
Right.
So a lot of people say, well, what'd you lose? I never had anything to lose. It's not like I ever gained anything and lost it, because I never had anything. So it wasn't what I had become. It's what I wasn't becoming. And I started to think about what I could become, not necessarily what I had become. It's what I wasn't becoming. And that's when it kind of dropped a couple seeds in my head. Now, I hadn't changed yet, but I started to calculate the opportunity cost of what my behavior was actually costing me. So the opportunity cost is the cost of the best option that's not chosen. So even let's just say you did something right and you gained 10 points, okay? But the better option would have gained you 100. So the opportunity cost is the difference between those two. And I started to see that, I started to notice these patterns in my life, and I was like, well, maybe if I just tried this, but with the misguided approach, I was still in what we consider to be self-will. So I could I could get myself to zero, but I would keep dropping. I would get myself to zero, but I would keep dropping. And what ended up being the reason why I was never positioned where I could actually take solution is because I didn't have that underlying layer of humility that was allowing me to ask for help. And then genuinely accepting that help, and then actually pursuing it.
So then up to this point, you're just banging and banging and banging, trying to do it all yourself.
Banging my head against the wall.
And
yes.
you said, exactly, well, definition of insanity, right?
Yes.
So you thought before you had this awakening that I'll just try harder and I can fix it.
Sure. And that's, I got to understand that this is what's caused me to do it. So my thinking is what's got me in every situation that I've been in. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to fix the problem with the problem. And the unfortunate part about that is the problem is telling me I don't have a problem. That if I just self-will it enough, then I'm going to be able to get out of this on my own.
So you had to realize I had to take myself or yourself out of the equation.
I had to take myself out of the equation. Okay. Yes.
Now, we could say, from what Will said, from what other guests have said, you're the problem, right?
100%.
And when people realize that you're the problem or self is the problem, that's when you can finally start looking for the solution, correct?
Well, there's a position where you have to, number one, identify that there is a problem. I mean, we all know that there's a superficial problem, like, okay, well, I didn't pay my bill, so my car got taken, right? Mm-hmm. But what we don't understand is we can't hold a job because of our lack of doing esteemable things and our low self-esteem, which contributes to our inconsistency. So we got to get back to the root. Right. And that's why I lost my job, and that's why I didn't pay my bill, and that's why I don't have a car, and that's why the car was taken. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's kind of like we're having to go back to the point of origin, which is peeling back that onion, man, and peeling back that layer. And for most of us who've used drugs and or just, you can just call it alternative behaviors to disguise who we are. A lot of us have, number one, we probably don't know who we are. We probably haven't sensed very much of us since we were kids because we were allowing that level of disenfranchisement to take us to a place that was like a synthetic reality, and in that synthetic reality, I started to believe that reality, man. I mean, it became reality because it's almost like you willed it into reality, because I behaved it so much. It just happened to be now with the situation that I'm in. Personally, for me, the one common denominator, like I always say, is for every single issue that I've had in my life in a negative manner has been my self-will. It's been self-will. And everybody said, well, how do you remove yourself, man? Well, number one, I have to understand that I can't do this alone, and that I probably should start taking suggestions from other people who know a little bit better than me, man. Right. But in that process, it requires a large removal of ego. So the same things that I'm using to survive with are the things that are keeping me sick. And it's all the same secrets that I'm keeping and all the things that I'm masking that are truly contributing to what is the end result or the life of consequence that I've been experiencing. So,
okay. So, post-prison, you start to figure this out, and you said that you had to take yourself out of the equation. So what did you replace that with? Because you took yourself out of the equation now, and you know that you have a problem. So what do you replace it with?
So it was suggested to me that, Adam, you got to change one thing. That's everything. The good thing for me is they say you don't got to lose everything to get the program, but it helps because at least all my options were taken. I was out of options, man. Right. I was out of options. So it was suggested to me that I start taking suggestions from men who've been down this road, who have done a little bit more than me, that have not necessarily the car, the girl, or the career that I want, but have the character that I want.
Definitely.
Okay? So I'm not talking about the guy makes a certain amount of money and that's the lifestyle that I see superficially. I'm talking about the internal way that man can, the way he acts. Because I don't believe very much of what this is, what's going on here. I look at what these are doing. And the people that are actively living a life of purpose. And it was told to me that if I'm constantly seeking pleasure or trying to pleasure myself with these extracurricular things, that I lack purpose. So I better find my purpose, And part of the underlying layer of humility, it allows me to be teachable. Well, one of the things that I have a 7th grade education. So full transparency, I have a 7th grade education. I only made it to 7th grade, okay? I didn't even know I was teachable. When I found out I was teachable, anybody that knows me, that's literally all I do now.
Yeah, Adam's a lifelong learner. You give him a book, like a 300-page book, he'll have it done by the weekend. So
twice.
Yeah, twice. They know the subject better than you.
But what I started to notice now that, like I told you back before, that opportunity cost,
Right.
that I was able to calculate with my limited ability to see what I was truly losing. Now that I was able to see what I was truly losing was a lot more than it really was. That's when I started to take into consideration, well, wow, man, like, I mean, I better get out my own way. Because now that I'm starting to take these suggestions and I'm keeping this underlying layer of humility,
Right.
I'm teachable.
Definitely.
You know, but wait a minute, I thought I had these learning disabilities. No, man, you don't have a learning disability. You're just acting in defiance to try to hide from yourself, man. And that's why you didn't want to learn any subject, and that's why you got kicked out of school, and that's why you behaved, because it was your behavior. So it was told to me that I need to act my way into better thinking instead of trying to think my way into better acting. Okay.
I just want to highlight what you said because, you know, I spent a lot of time in prison, and I've seen a lot of people like you who said they didn't have the opportunities, or they had 7th grade educations, or dropped out of school in the 9th grade. And then I meet them and they're intelligent, they read and everything. And so, like you said, we get in our own ways, you know. So I'm not blaming anybody but ourselves. You know what I'm saying? It's a self thing. So it's very, I think it's a great thing that you know, said that, and that other people hear that. Like, there's very intelligent people that have been through the things that we've been through, and they just missed the opportunity because they were in their own way.
And the opportunity will represent itself. Like, I mean, we went to postdoctoral, you know, an A4M convention. These are postdoctoral studies, okay? I had most of it committed to memory. Like, these are postdoctoral courses, which means you have a doctor and attend this place. You're a doctorate and attend this place. So most of the stuff I already had committed to memory. So it wasn't the fact that I you know, I don't have a learning disability, man.
Right.
I just have to be able to allow myself to have abilities and have the ability to, like I said, I have to start believing in myself, man.
Right.
I have to start believing in myself.
Right.
And we only accept the love that we believe we deserve. And so in the bottom of that is I have to be able to give it up. I have to be able to give it up. And most of my behavior has been the things that has been cutting me off. It wasn't that I had an inability to do it, man. I was just not doing it, you know.
So we've established, right? You're the problem in my life. I'm the problem in Will's life. He's the problem, right? So if we're all the problem, what's the solution?
Good question.
So obviously, so this is how it was explained to me. I can't, he can. And if I understand that I can't, I'll understand that he can. Okay? But if I don't understand that I can't, I'll never understand that he can. And I'll never let him. So I got to let a solution in my life, man. I got to let a solution in my life. And I'm not, and in my program that we work, we don't tell you which God to pick, as long as it's not you. Okay? Right. As long as it's not you, you know? And if you're looking for like some kind of divine intervention, the simple fact that you're still breathing should be it, you know, for a person like me. Okay? I shouldn't need any more signs that this thing exists. Because at the end of the day, I should have been dead. I mean, I have multiple ODs, man. I've been shot, stabbed, you name it. Go down the list. I got a paragraph of them. I got a paragraph of excuses as to why I shouldn't be in the situation that I'm in. I have a paragraph of excuses that I can take, you know, in order to not take accountability. But at the end of the day, I can be an ex-con, I can be a junkie, I can be all these things, man. But I got the same 24 hours a day as everybody else. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I got the same opportunity. And for those people that want to believe they're oppressed, start looking inwards, man. Start looking at yourself, man. It's not the outside world, it's you. Okay?
It's almost like a victim mentality, right?
Well, if by default, if I'm the victim, then what am I going to do with it, man? Then
if you're the victim, you can't be the problem, right?
Yeah, then I deserve the excuse, right? And if I accept the excuse, by default, I'm part of the problem and I'm not seeking the solution. Because you're right, I can't acknowledge the problem, you know. So.
Okay, so you found your solution, you found your higher power. Where do you go from there? How does your life to start to improve? How do you see them?
Your life doesn't improve right away.
Right.
Okay. So that's the whole part that people don't understand. Okay. It just doesn't turn on. Okay. it requires consistency.
Right.
You know, like this last time I have 5 years clean and sober. We're almost 6 years clean and sober this time. And I'm knee deep in what I consider the solution. Why? Because my life depends on it, man. You know, and I wake up every single day with untreated alcoholism, drug addiction, blah, 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 go down the list, all of those things. And I only get a daily reprieve from active addiction by maintenance of my spiritual condition. Okay, so I have to maintain this spiritual condition, this digital communication with something outside of me, because if not, I'm lost again too. Because if I don't believe in something, you know what I mean? If I don't believe in something, then I'm going to defer back to self-will, and then I'm screwed again. So my inability to deal with life on life's terms has contributed to, obviously, you know, the downward cascade of events that you see from,
Right.
you know, living this way. Paragraph, yeah. And it has, like I said, the one common denominator has been my will. Okay. The one common denominator to every single success that I've ever seen in my life. And I'll be honest with you, man, I have just like I have abnormally large bad things, I have abnormally large good things, you know, because I no matter how big my problems are, okay, no matter how big my problems are, I got a big God, man. I got a really big God.
There you go.
So regardless of what happens, I have really big successes too, man. If most people that meet me, if I tell my story, they don't believe it. I say, that's the point. That's the point, man. That wasn't me. This is who he really wanted me to be. And this is what I want to show. Because at the end of the day, like, what do they say? We got to effectively be the change that we want to see, man. Right. So my active participation in recovery, my active participation in the solution, and my ability to delay immediate gratification and live a life of purpose is in direct parallel to my future success. And I believe that 100% and wholeheartedly. I also believe that I have the one disease, okay, which is drug addiction and alcoholism. I have the one disease that leaves me better off than if I would have never had it to begin with. And the only reason why I say that is because of the solution that we have to it. And in that solution, I get to understand that I can't, he can, and I just get to let him. And my life becomes simple, okay? And I get to do these really complex things and make them look easy. Before, it was really simple things, and I would just completely explode. You know, my life would go in a direction where obviously I was, you know, when I was headed down the wrong direction, it got to the point where I even I stopped trying to steer the other way. I just went down that road. I just kept going down it.
So we talked about purpose, right? People have no purpose. You had to find your purpose. What is Adam Moreno's purpose?
So my purpose today, especially with my participation in recovery, is bringing a message of hope to drug addicts, alcoholics, ex-cons, gangbangers, you name it, man. If you're what you would consider scum of the street, hey, man, I raise my hand too, man. I got the laundry list of excuses too, man. But like I said, the one thing that I am is I'm God's son, and I get a seat at his table right next to him. Okay, so there's nothing that I can't have if my dad owns everything. Okay, and once I accept that, I get to participate in that solution with him.
Right.
You know, and in that participation, I get to be a part. So besides the drug addiction and alcoholism, most men that know me know that I'm going to give you 100%. They know better to ask me even certain questions because you're going to get a 2-hour answer.
Yeah, I see a missed call from Adam. I'm like, this is going to be an hour-long conversation. I'll call him in a minute.
And so what I've done is I start treating people the way that I want to be treated. Mm-hmm. So if you ask me a question, I put so much effort into that answer that you almost want to avoid asking me, unless you really want the answer. and I know that sounds like another deterrent or a way that I push people away, but at the end of the day, man, I just really want. So I've never understood how to love. Okay, I never understood or had the capacity to love. But because I've done this work with me, I want to show love. I believe this is a program of love, okay? I cannot transmit something I don't have. So what I had before was hate. So the only thing that I can transmit to you, my kid, my mom, my dad, anybody around me is something that is nature, where the primary premise is hate. Okay, so now that I know how to love, man, I just want. I'm like a little kid that just drew something and wants to show everybody. Like that's literally how it is. Yeah. And I now that I can transmit something that I have, It's like, I just want everybody to have it, man.
Right.
You know, so that's why, like, if you ask me a question and I have the answer, I mean, I'm just gonna, yeah, I'm good. Get ready for a 2-hour conversation.
Well, I'm sorry we don't have 2 hours for this next question, but I definitely want to ask you a question as far as, so we went through your childhood, we went through juvenile hall, county jail, prison, everything like that, and you taking yourself out the equation and finding a higher power. And you said the successes didn't immediately come, but they came. Mm-hmm. So can we speak to that?
So one of the things so of the successes, I don't necessarily consider myself a success. Mm-hmm. I allow the suggestions to work in my life, and by proxy they produce a result. Okay, right. A result that's better than the one that I can produce. Okay, right. So so my truck, that's God's truck. My house, that's God's house. My money, that's God's money. So I didn't necessarily achieve a layer of success. I just allowed God to do for me what I couldn't do for myself. So it didn't happen right away, man. Once I started participating in the solution, remember, I had to take suggestion for everything. I was stripped down to an allowance. Okay, I was told, like, I got to get a labor position, $12 an hour. You know, I took all the suggestions possible. So up front, I didn't necessarily have it didn't look pretty, okay? Right. But all of the same behaviors, like, you know how when we run a program, right. If we're locked down, we run a program. I always desire sameness, right. Okay? So I have no problem running a program. Program is easy. Matter of fact, that's a lot easier for me than a bunch of different all the time.
You know what's going on.
I know what's going structure. On. And I can be consistent in that program as long as I know that I'm going down the right road. So I didn't get too, I didn't do things for the income.
Right.
I did it for the outcome. Okay? So it wasn't for the income. And by default, income came. Okay? So I didn't do anything. I didn't worry about money when I came out. Now I still don't worry about money because I don't have to. Okay? So I never did anything. So by removing me, I removed my selfish and self-centered behavior, and I became the complete antithesis. I became giving and God-centered. And all the other stuff in the middle just figured itself out. So I can't necessarily tell you the formula of how it happened because I'm not the one that did it. So that's the only thing that I can say. But what I can say is it's worth the shot. It's worth the shot. Because left to my own devices, man, I didn't necessarily yield a very productive result.
It's kind of like my favorite Bible verse that I like to say, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. Like, technically, that's the only thing I worry about. And then everything else kind of figures itself out, right? And you're worried about not doing your own will and doing his will, and everything figures itself out, right?
So basically, every morning, what I ask for knowledge of what he wants me to do and to give me the power to carry that out. See, I'm not asking for a lighter load, man. Okay, I'm asking to build a stronger back, so I can carry it for you, man. Let me be a conduit of what you want me to do, man. And the rest of the stuff, because I've already looked for love in the wrong places, man. I don't need to learn that lesson again. I don't. I don't need it. I don't want my will back, man. This is way nicer. I can tell you right now that my position as a man, I can love wholeheartedly. I can give back. Okay, I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. I'm dependable. I'm consistent. I'm a stand-up dude. I mean, ask anybody around me, man. They know I'm Johnny on the spot the second you need me. That's not what I could say from the Adam that had his will. When Adam has options, he's not that dude. He's just not. He's a flake. He's a liar. He's a thief. And even though I wasn't necessarily a big thief, I mean, how many nights did I steal away from my dad's sleep? Right? And how many nights? My poor dad used to love it when I used to get locked up because he knew where I was at. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I can sit here and say I'm only harming myself, but I'm selfish and self-centered, so that's how I justify it to myself.
It was something we talked earlier that really stood out to me, and I just want you to say it again for people can hear it. And you said something that you said purpose over pleasure.
So it was told to me to, like you said, seek ye the kingdom of God. So how I define that is I put my purpose before pleasure. Because it was defined to me that people that are constantly seeking pleasure, they lack purpose.
Right.
Okay. So now that I found my purpose, I now find pleasure in my purpose. So now I got them both taken care of. And in that purpose, I don't have to constantly seek pleasure, man. You know, my life isn't just some constant need for stimuli. You know, at the end of the day, man, most of the stuff that happens in my life is beautiful and I get to share it with everybody. I've switched from liability to asset based on that primary function of going from purpose to pleasure. Before I was an extreme liability. I was going to harm you and everybody else around me. And if you stuck around me and loved me long enough, man, I was going to bring you down with me. You know, because I could not transmit something that I didn't have. So once I put that purpose before pleasure, now all of a sudden I became an asset and I spread from there.
Now, we were talking before the podcast about compounding interest. So you look at life and stuff like that. Explain that concept.
So for those that would like to Google it, if you look up the formula for compound interest, when I saw that, a full transparency, I'm high-functioning autistic, so I see things that other people don't. Okay? So when I saw the formula for compound interest, I was like, that's God. I was like, that's it. That's it right there. That's the formula. That's exactly what happens. So every position that I take, and then we add this interest, and then at the end, it's just this massive, abundant life. And when I see that compounding interest, at the end of the day, man, I'm like, wow. I mean, the result that's yielded by something like compounded interest, if you ask anybody of their investment thesis, they ask what's the best way to have long-term wealth. It's usually the compound interest, okay? Unless you want to, the risk level that you take in a compound structured investment strategy is going to be a little bit more than trying to like play the market, okay? But at the end of the day, it's a for sure thing because it will compound. And so that's how I feel God is. That's how I feel God is in my life. It's a for sure thing. I might not like some of the contributions that I have to make, very similar to like a Roth IRA. Like I might have to make those contributions at the beginning, but now I'm eager. Now I want to max out my Roth every year. Now I'm trying to put more in, you know.
For those who don't know, what is a Roth RA?
It's
asking for a friend.
It's a way that people structure some of their retirement, man.
Okay.
You're allowed a certain contribution per year, which is limited, but at the end of the day, it compounds interest, man.
Okay.
Yeah. So it allows at the end the interest to be compounded over time.
Okay.
So, but that's how I view God, man.
Okay.
And everything that I've ever put in, He's matched. Like a 401k. Okay, so if
I know that one.
Yeah, he's matched.
Now, one of the things you've dedicated your life, obviously now a life of purpose over pleasure. And one of the purposes that you now have is helping people that were previously in your position and or going down that road, right? So what types of things do you tell people, or what type of things do you participate in, whether it's organizations or programs, to either help rehabilitate men or keep them out altogether?
So obviously, you'll notice that most of us come from a 12-step program. I am Christian. You don't need to be. Okay, that's just the higher power that I choose. I'm a very, how do you say? I love volunteer work, man. I love volunteer work because I believe that it's not service if you're getting paid for it, man. But I do get paid because the check that I get has more commas and zeros than anything I can make at a job. Period. So Brother Benno's, I believe in that program. That program is where when I spatula people off the streets, and I'm an outreach guy, man. Like I'm a street outreach. Like I will pound the pavement. The same thing I would do for a sale, like at when I was selling memberships for the gym. I'll do the same thing, for recovery, man. I'll pound the pavement. I have a couple guys that I just got into, matter of fact, today we were able to get a guy in to a detox facility called the First Step House, which I'm a huge volunteer at, and I love to participate.
How did you get that lead to discover that guy?
I actually got it from OPD, a guy that I train at Metroflex or train with, very similar to my relationship with you. He was LAPD. He switched over to OPD, and I said, hey man, if you know anybody that has a story similar to mine that's rehabilitatable, why don't you give him my number, man, please? That's because he asked me, basically, it's how you can pay me back. Like, I don't need your money. So if I trained you, I don't want your money back. I wouldn't take it anyways. But this is how you can pay me back. You can go out and you can allow me to be of service to these people because that's where I get my paycheck. Okay? So that's how I pay myself. Because I can't keep what I have, man, unless I'm willing to give it away. I got to give it away. Because if I don't, then I implode. Okay? Because with a bunch of options, we all know what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
we all know what happens. So as far as I'm concerned, the only way that you can pay me back is by allowing me to go do this again. You can't, if you look at the word back, pay back, it's backwards. Let's go forward. So why don't you give your number out? We'll give my number out to anybody you see on the street. Now, obviously, we all know the percentages are pretty low, but I got one.
Right.
God got one. We got another one in, man. And I was able to admit him to detox. Most of the guys that we deal with are, it's going to be, there's the fentanyl's hitting the streets pretty bad, guys. I don't know if you guys know that. It's killing more people than, I've seen more fentanyl deaths than I've seen actual, I can't use the word, we'll get banned, but than the other deaths. We'll just use them, okay? So at the end of the day, man, I can sit there as a property owner, I can sit there and complain about what's going on in my community, or I can go out and do something about it, man. Like I said, man, that's God's truck. Like I said, man, that's God's money. Like I said, man, that's God's house. Everything that I own is for his will, man. It's not mine.
So you've been a junkie. It sounds like no one could have told you better because you were the problem. No one could have told you were the problem when you knew you had a problem. What do you tell these guys that you're trying to pick off the street? Hey, man, you're the problem. Let me get you into detox. What? Because I assume it's not 100% conversion rate, right?
No.
So what would you tell someone like you?
So number one, the biggest gift that these people, because there is a gift that comes from all this. Okay, there's a gift that comes from the true annihilation that you feel when you're on the streets. It's called the gift of desperation. Okay, and then you're willing to give something a chance. I don't normally say anything, hey man, you want a different way of life. But hopefully they're nuked enough to be able to take that solution and they grab onto it. There was a guy named Jonathan, same thing. He was on the corner, man, and he was just doing the wiggle worm and had his his life scattered on the corner, okay? Yeah. His sleeping bag, the bags with the stuff, a random bag of Epsom salt. We don't need to go over that. But let's just say that I what we call is called 12-step, because having had a spiritual awakening as a result of doing these steps, man, I carried the message to people who still suffer. And that's my primary purpose, is to do that. And if I don't do that on a daily basis, and if I'm not actively seeking that 12-step, guess what? I lose everything that I have. And I know that 100%.
You're a couple bad choices away from Jonathan.
One
bad choice.
Not a couple.
Yeah.
One. Yeah, one. Because the second I make that choice and get away with it, then I'm really screwed.
Because you're going to keep doing it.
I always say the worst thing that ever happened to me was I got away with the first crime I committed. I mean, if I would have at least got in trouble for the first one, I maybe would have heeded some consequence while I was still honoring consequence.
Yeah. Well, so obviously we don't count as success, but what are also some of the entrepreneur you are able to be in your 40s, retired at this moment, fully self-sufficient. What are some of the things that got you to that part of life?
So part of the disciplinary position that was taken from me, or that was suggested to me, that was taken from me, was I had my money taken from me. I didn't have it, so I didn't need it. But one of the things that I did was I started investing, and purpose before pleasure. I had a purpose of maybe yielding a long-term result, so I needed to give my short-term pleasure a stop. I started making investments back in 2017 that ended up yielding me what would be the end result today. I learned how to trade. I pick up subjects pretty quickly, and I entrench myself in those subjects because it matters. And I believe that if I'm kind of being led a certain direction, and I believe that God's pushing me in that direction, then I should probably honor that, and I should take that, and I should run with it. So needless to say, I was able to make some positive investments. But one of the things that I can say, the reason why I'm retired, is because I didn't squander my money.
Right.
Because I wasn't seeking pleasure. So it's the same thing I did at the beginning. I'm not doing anything different now. The only reason why I'm technically retired is because I don't spend any money. I really don't. I mean, I can maintain my lifestyle, but at the end of the day, if I keep doing the purposeful things, it just keeps multiplying.
Delayed gratification.
I delay gratification, which is in direct parallel to my future success. And if I just keep delaying the gratification, the success just keeps coming, man.
So let me ask you a question. If you could talk to somebody going through the same thing that you went through, and now they're at a point right now, you said just 2017, so you wasn't born with this knowledge. You didn't gain this knowledge in prison, so you just basically taught yourself this. What would be, is there one book, one thing that they can learn to get them on the right path of financial literacy?
The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth is a great book. I would suggest reading that. But the first thing that I would start doing is start taking an inventory of myself.
Right.
Because when I start to learn how to invest in myself, okay, and the things that I'm supposed to be doing and delaying those, then by secondary, I can start investing in other things. But I myself have to become an asset before I understand how an asset truly moves. I won't understand the momentum at which it moves, the velocity at which it moves, the intrinsic value. I won't know any of those things until I myself can put myself in the shoes of being an asset myself.
Right.
So that's how I always tell people about investing. The one thing that I believe you should have is emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence.
Yeah, it's not IQ, it's EQ. And which is way more significant than IQ, to as far as I'm concerned. And so does a lot of the, Forbes 100 was they don't even qualify IQ anymore. Before they were testing for EQ, which is your emotional quotient, not your intellectual quotient. So EQ, it's like self-awareness, the ability to delay immediate gratification, to divorce yourself of the emotional attachment to things and get the job done, blah, 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 blah.
Right. And those are all the things you didn't have when you were getting in trouble at a younger age, right? Like you just said it earlier, you said you didn't have any of that stuff, and your ego got in the way because you had no emotional intelligence. And
so EQ can actually be gained over time. IQ can't. Your IQ is a pretty static number. It's going to be the same number whether you test when you're 20 or whether when you're 40. There might be some slight variations to that. But as far as your EQ, you can develop your EQ over time. And if you just wanted to go by default, man, the best thing that you can do as far as your investment thesis is to invest in your education, man. Invest in your education. Pick a subject that kind of, interests you. But you have 24 hours in the day, man. And if you're spending 2 hours of that on Instagram that you can spend studying, that you can invest in yourself. I mean, invest it in yourself, man. It's going to come out.
So you just said invest in your education. So for those who weren't paying attention, you have a 7th grade education. So when you say invest in your education, it's not go to school, or if you have the ability, then do that. But it's just read, pick up a book and read and invest and use your time to educate yourself.
We live in a digital age. I remember when I had my first girlfriend, when I had first got out, I found a computer, man, because I didn't have to go rent books.
Right.
And she wanted to break up with me. She was like, because I was like, and she literally was trying to throw me out the house. Okay, right. I spent 0 time with her. She didn't exist, and I became so obsessed with the fact that I had this wealth of information at my fingertips. I just literally, she wanted to throw me. As a matter of fact, she did break up with me at the time. Temporarily, she did break up with me because I had this wealth of information that I didn't have access to. You know what it's like having a library that we might have access to maybe, and then you don't necessarily get every subject. Right. But the fact that I could click the subject that I wanted, I was off and running.
Easy.
Off and running. And by default, man, that's I started finding things I was interested in. The one thing that I learned too at this A4M convention that we went to is a tech diet. I believe that the things that we use as distractions distract us. So if I'm distracted, I'm not seeking my purpose, man. Right. I'm not seeking my purpose. I'm not going to sit here and flame Instagram and social media. But ever since that convention, I haven't been on social media ever since.
Right. That was last December.
That was last December.
7 months ago.
It's a long time.
Yeah. So I take things literally, man. And we're talking about the World Congress here. These people know what they're talking about.
Right.
So I took it literally.
Right.
I was like, I'm done. I don't have a business I'm promoting. I don't have to be on there for marketing reasons. There's no need for me to be on there other than to distract myself, right? So if I'm going to invest that much of my tech diet in it's like eating garbage.
Right.
No, I'm going to eat for purpose, not pleasure. So when I'm eating for purpose, my body will change and look like I'm eating for purpose, right? Same thing here.
Hope they're paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there any last words you want to give to people out there, especially the post-P or people in prison right now?
For those of you who don't think you have a chance, okay, for those of you who don't think you have a chance, if you continue to believe that lie, you do not have a chance. I guarantee you, whether you can or you can't, both are right, okay? And that's going to come from deep down inside. They say, find God, clean house, and help others. And in that process, you'll be able to understand what it's like to truly live. Everything that we do on the streets is to barely survive. Once we let go of that and we accept an alternative solution, we truly are able to learn how to thrive. There's a big difference between surviving and thriving.
Cool. Anything you want to add, Will?
No, I really appreciate you coming through. I definitely appreciate you sharing your story. It was a powerful story, definitely. And I hope people learn from it, not just your struggles, but your successes. And as you say, not your successes, God's will. So however you define it, I hope they get something from it.
And if anybody's listening to this that has somebody in their family or anybody that needs help, I'm going to leave my email. It's Adam, ATOM, MORENO @Yahoo. If you have anybody that needs to be committed or needs help in regards to detox, inpatient, mental health, shoot me an email, man. Let me know what's going on. Let me know if I can help.
Thank you.
So, one of the reasons I want to add him on here too is because obviously I'm not an addict or anything, but the wisdom Adam always shares with me and pours into me is something that I hope you and Adam can connect, Will, so he can obviously pour into you because, if everyone out of prison ends up like Adam, then we're doing a good job here, right?
World will be a whole lot
and
better.
that's what we want. And so, I'm thankful for you being here. And hopefully we'll even get you back on in the future because I know you got way more stuff to say.
Yeah, God doesn't want you in prison, and God doesn't want you living a life of consequence. Life has you can live a life of abundance. I don't care what you did before. We're concerned with what you want to do now.
Yeah.
And move forward.
Amen.
Post-P Chronicles.
Amen.
Well, I'm Steven.
I'm Will.
And I'm Adam.
Post-P Chronicles.
Post-P Chronicles.